Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Clark and I'm a publisher of local history books. Over the years I've used hundreds of old picture postcards in my work and I find them fascinating. Their photographs provide unique historic records while their messages were used like we send a text or email today. Some of the images on the front of the cards were quite personal and you could compare them with the photographs we now post on Facebook, Instagram or other social media. Here's an early postcard of Durham Road, Low Fell. It was posted in 1905, but perhaps the photograph is a little bit earlier, I think around 1900. To help date postcards, you get good at spotting fashions, clothes people wore, hats or their hairstyles. This postcard is by Oaty of Tynemouth. You can see his name on the left-hand side of the card. Photographer Matthew Oaty, the founder of the firm in the 1880s, was one of the first in the north of England to produce picture postcards from views around the area. His postcards covered everywhere from Berwick to Harrogate and westwards into Cumberland. Further up Durham Road, here's another Oaty card. Trams often appear in postcards and you can see one approaching. I like the people sitting on the side of the road on the left, just watching the world go by and posing for the photographer. This card has a consecutive number from the previous one, 2805, so the photograph is likely to have been taken on the same day. Picture postcards first appeared in this country in 1894, but the golden age of the postcard started around 1900 with the introduction of improved printing. Over 400 million postcards a year were sent in the UK at the start of the 20th century, and by 1918, that figure had doubled. So sending postcards was a fun way to keep in touch with your friends and your loved ones. Here we are inside Oaty's studio in Tynemouth. It was claimed it was one of the biggest and best lit studios in England. They also had workrooms devoted to the finishing and touching up of portrait work. So even 100 years ago, they were working to improve your photographs. Today we use programs like Photoshop or apps on our phones to work on our pictures. Notice the natural light from the skylight and all the various props around the room. You can also see a backdrop that was used behind the person having their picture taken. This is my favourite studio postcard, a young lad at bath time, and his props are the tin bath, the towel and his soap. Unfortunately, I don't know who this is or where they are, with such a great image. I often tell people to write on the back of their postcards or their photographs in pencil, who is in the picture, where are they, what are they doing, do you know the year? Then all the details of the image can be shared in the future. A number of postcard photographers did studio work. This was a time before most people had cameras, so for personal pictures like this, you had to visit the photographer. Here's a postcard of Felling High Street. Going off the hairstyles of those girls on the left-hand side, it's from the 1920s. I love the horse making its way up the street. And on the left is a branch of shepherds, a famous Gateshead name. This was published by the Gateshead postcard photographer Robert Johnston. On the back of his cards is stamped the Monarch series, and that was the name he gave to his cards. Johnston produced some great images, and there's some collectors I speak to today think his are the best postcards ever published in the Northeast. Another Johnston postcard, this time Durham Road, Low Fell, 20 years on from the earlier postcard by Oaty, and again people are waiting for the tram to arrive. Johnston postcards can be recognised by his style, the box with a caption and number in the left-hand side. This one is numbered 4267. The numbers are consecutive and give a rough idea of the date. Numbers in the hundreds are from early in the 20th century, while numbers like this, around 4000, are from the early 1920s. On the back of this postcard was a message. Weather not very good, but we are making up for all of that. Lots of messages you find talk about the weather. Postcard number 8626, a much later image of the post office at Bilkey. The car you can see is probably the photographer's, and Johnston included his car in many of his photographs. I've seen postcards from throughout Northumberland and County Durham, often with the car placed within the image. Now my favourite Robert Johnson postcard, and it's not a Gateshead picture, it's the rough sea at Tynemouth from the late 1920s. You can see that wonderful building, the plaza, on the far right. Johnston had a number of shops in Gateshead, but in 1946 a fire burnt down his West Street shop and all of his negatives, over 14,000, were destroyed. That's the famous fire that destroyed Shepherd's department store. So all we have left of Johnston's wonderful pictures are the postcards in our collections. Another Gateshead postcard photographer and publisher was Gibson. This atmospheric view of Bentham Avenue is from the early 1900s. His postcards can be identified by the stylized writing you see at the bottom. I've used a number of Gibson postcards over the years, but it was only when I was putting this talk together I realised how good they were. Gibson was very prolific at the start of the 20th century, and most of his postcards are from the early 1900s. Another Gibson postcard fell in colliery. Mining postcards were very popular. Gibson and Johnston photographed dozens of collieries over the years, and they also did other industries as well. And some of these postcards are the best, and sometimes the only images we have of this industrial heritage. Today, mining cards and railway stations are very collectible, and some of the more expensive ones to buy now. But postcards were collected from their earliest days, and often a message on the back will say something like, "Here's another one for your collection." Now a street scene by Gibson, Sunderland Road, in the early 1900s. This sort of view would be impossible to take today with the traffic we now have. But 120 years ago, you could set up your photograph like this. Even the dogs have posed for the photographer. A young lad on the far left is holding a bowler, a hoop you would bowl along with your hand or a stick. The children look quite well dressed in this photograph, unlike the children in the next postcard. I think this is a great image of social history by Gibson. It shows Fellingshaw at the start of the 20th century, with the chimney of the zinc oxide works you can see in the background. It shows how people lived very close to industry in those days. But look at the girl on the far right. She's not wearing any shoes. And now my favourite Gibson postcard, the swings at Birtley Recreation Ground. Note the boys only swings and girls only swings as well. Events were popular subjects for the postcard publisher, and what better than the building of the Tyne Bridge? This is one of a series of cards from this publisher. This one, number 5, is dated the 11th of March 1927. Another in the series of the building of the bridge, number 29 this time, and they are making good progress. It's dated the 11th of January 1928. Postcards showing events often included the dates, which is very handy for us, looking at them 100 years later. And now number 49 in this series, the 6th of September 1928, and the bridge is nearly finished. It shows how busy the quayside at Newcastle used to be. A ship from Bergen can be seen, and there's lots of barrels of cargo lying around ready to be taken away. Here's a modern view of the previous postcard. Postcards are ideal for then and now comparisons and show how things have changed over the past 100 years. Today, the quayside is much quieter and a popular place for visitors. Disasters were a favourite subject for the postcard publisher. This card shows the wreck of the Leeds and Newcastle Express train after a derailment at Felling in 1907. Another card showing the wreck of the Express at Felling. Look at all the people in the background watching. What would they be doing today? They'd have their mobile phones out, all taking videos of the scene. Another disaster, this time the aftermath of a gale in Low Fell, another postcard by Robert Johnston. There's no date, but the caption says, "The roof of the house on the right fell upon a man and 2 horses, killing all instantly." Publishers were always producing disaster cards. They were just so popular with the public. As well as train wrecks and gales, I've seen cards showing floods, landslides, fires, and even bombing raids by Zeppelins during the First World War. There were also many postcards produced after mining disasters, and they were often sold to raise funds for miners' families. A more humorous postcard shows an accident that occurred on West Street on the 1st of June 1933. Described as a run on the bank in Gateshead, this was caused by a lorry which crashed into Barclays Bank due to brake failure. Lots of cards were produced of holiday or day trip destinations. There were many postcards showing views of the seaside, and you would have bought them as souvenirs. While in Gateshead, there are lots of images of Saltwell Park. Here's a lovely postcard again from Robert Johnston of the lake at Saltwell from around 1920. And taken on the same day as the previous card, as the number is consecutive, is one of the swings in the park. And now an unusual view of Park House. After the war, perhaps, it says on the caption. I've seen a number of similar postcards where the publisher has used a trick during the development of the photograph. Here's one of the Spanish city at Whitley Bay, and it says, "When you see Whitley Bay like this, you're drunk." A great souvenir for a day at the seaside. The final postcards I will show are from the First World War. The war saw the peak of postcard sending. Over 800 million were sent in the final year of the war, with more people away from home than ever before. One postcard sent from Low Fell to Cumberland in 1914 had the message on the back, "We are all full of the war." This postcard of the school on Kells Lane was sent during the First World War from a soldier to his wife. The school was occupied by troops at the time, and perhaps he is one of the men in the photo. The message on the back reads, "Dear wife." Not darling wife or dear Margaret or whatever her name was, but dear wife. I know it's not quite the same, but could you imagine someone reading your texts or emails in 100 years' time? I'll continue with the soldier's message. "We are going on all right. We had gun drill today, but some of us are parting tomorrow. Been full of cold today." I mentioned that the weather is a common theme for messages. People's health was another. A number of postcards were produced that showed the camps around the northeast where troops were stationed. This one, sent from the Felling area, has a tongue-in-cheek message on the front. "Our camp is here, it's very queer. We cannot tell you where. The Felling is near, Springwell up here, and Heworth over there. You cannot do better than risk that letter. It's sure to land somewhere. I am there." And now a First World War postcard with the message, "I am thinking of you at Gateshead." This is a generic card, and I've seen this image of the soldier and his sweetheart used several times, with the publisher just changing the name of the place. I've seen the same postcard with Cramlington or Newcastle replacing Gateshead. I think it would have been very touching to receive this postcard from a loved one during the war, and I will end on this image. I hope you've enjoyed my talk. It's not the complete history of all picture postcards, but just a glimpse of why I think they're important. If you have any old postcards at home, have a look at them. See who the publisher is and read the message on the back if there is one. Look at the date stamp to see when it was posted. If it wasn't posted, Look at the people on it and try to guess the year it's from by the fashions or other things in the photograph. It will take you back to a time when the humble picture postcard was a wonderful way of communicating. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.